Hey, everybody out there in Facebook land. I am so glad that you're joining us. I am Paul Sterling. This is the Courageous Love Show. And my guest tonight, Lyn, and how do I say it right? Lindbergh or Lindbergh? How do I?
Lyn Lindbergh. Lindbergh, yes.
Lindbergh. And I am really excited because Lyn is talking about one of my favorite subjects. It's all about communication and the quality of your relationships based on the quality of your communication. And when that falls apart, so does your relationship. And the interesting thing about it is most of us are pretty good at talking, and most of us suck at listening. That's a weakness. And if you want to let somebody know that you love them, what you do is you listen to them. So Lyn, were you always a good listener, or how did you get down this path?
Well, I got to tell you, Paul, thanks for having me here. I'm in my Seattle quarantine office, and it's so fun and ironic to go around talking about listening, right? I know. But so listening, I have always been, I would say, a better than average listener, and not just because I'm like everybody else who thinks they are, but I think I actually was. And one of the things that was unique or weird about, you could go back to my childhood, right, is I was raised in a family where people actually listened to each other, which was really wonderful and great. But then when I got into my 20s, I actually didn't have the skills of interjecting myself and talking. And so while everybody else around me was really good at talking on top of everybody, that was a skill I didn't have. But then I realized as I would go to, events or parties or it's time at school, I realized, oh my gosh, nobody listens and they're missing out on everything. There is so much to be learned by listening. There's so much power in listening, and this was just a thing my whole life. And over time, it became a skill that I honed in, is to just be a really great listener. And now we're both I'm a podcaster, and so I spend a lot of time listening there too, and a mother of teenage boys. And let me tell you, listening is a really good skill to have with teenagers.
And I'm going to ask you more about it in a second. What I want to do is I want to tell the listeners out there in Facebook land that this is an interactive call, and all of the Courageous Love calls are. So what that means is you can type us in questions, you can type in ahas in the comments, you can say hello like Dan has said. He says, "Good evening, y'all." So that's I don't know where you're from, but that's more of a Southern greeting than from Seattle, where Lyn is. I'm trying to think of what was the Alaskan greeting that we had when I lived up in Alaska.
Unless that's Dan Lewis, my high school teacher, and if that is, he needs to say hello. So,
well, it is a Dan Lewis from Florida. So
okay.
I don't know if it's your high school teacher from Florida or not.
I don't think so.
In a second, what I want to do is hear a little bit about what do you consider listening? Because see, most people are going to say they're good listeners. And here's what I'm going to kind of set it up just a little bit. We want communication to feel like this, to be fun and easy. You hit the ball over the net, they hit it back. You say something, they listen, and then they communicate back. And it ends up, if anything like my family, see, I had to be a good listener for a very different reason than you, Lyn. I had to be a good listener for survival. Like, it was a little bit, there's a lot of families that had a lot more danger and violence, but it was enough danger in my environment. My older brother would beat me up regularly. And so I had to be really cautious. So I had to pay attention to the outside world. So I made myself a good listener. But what I want to ask you about, I'm going to start with, what is listening and how do you cause people to lean in? And actually what I'd love for the listeners to do is let me know, when you're communicating, do you want people to lean in or lean out? Lean in, like they want to hear more, and their connection, cooperation, and compassion, or lean out, resistance, resentment, regret. Do you want lean in or lean out? And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Lyn and ask what, like you have studied this with, I guess, a passion. What does listening mean to you? How do you even know that you're doing it?
Listening to me really is understanding, and Paul, I know this is part of what you teach, even without me having taken your course yet. It is really understanding and hearing what is it that the other person is trying to communicate, because communication, it's complicated. I mean, the other person has to take what they're thinking, translate it into words in their brain. Those words have to turn, you know this, they have to turn into words out of your mouth. That person has to hear it through their ear, translate it through their brain, and then it goes back and forth. So, I mean, it's so fraught with areas of where it can just go wrong so badly. And so to me, listening is really being able to actually hear that inside, what is it that that person is actually trying to communicate, without getting hung up on if the, nonverbals are perfect, or if the tone is perfect, or even though all of that informs it. And the listening skills that I do is really a side pet project of mine that simply teaches the very, very core basic listening skills that we think we already know, we think we all do, but we don't.
Well,
Go ahead.
I definitely want to dive into that. I want to give people a frame of, and Lyn, you and I haven't talked about this, but I call it the pizza call. Anytime that anybody's ordered pizza, the people who take your order know that there's a quote from Marshall Rosenberg, the creator of nonviolent communication, says the normal outcome of most communication is misunderstanding. So let's start with that. The normal outcome of most communication, misunderstanding. So what can you do to handle it? And one of the things that people do when you order a pizza, they feed it back. Lyn, let me tell you, you ordered a 12-inch pizza, pepperoni, no cheese, or what, and here's your address, your credit card, your phone number.
And I'm like, no, actually vegan cheese. I'd like vegan cheese on my pizza.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's like they know it goes wrong often and they protect it. But how do we, and part of what I always work with is, not always, but mostly with couples. So how do couples listen and let each other know? Because you said there's this thought, the sound we make, the sound they hear, then the meaning they make around it. There's so many places it can go wrong.
Yes. Yeah. And I really think the big part of it comes way back to the basics of simply remembering to practice those active listening skills, especially with the people in our house that we spend time with all day, every day, especially our kids, our spouses, our partners, of getting rid of distractions. Take that darn cell phone and set it aside. I know.
No, yeah. I'm listening to you. Yeah. No.
Oh yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I'm sure you've talked about, as soon as you're, saying, yep, I'm listening, it tells the person who's talking, you're really not invested in what they're saying. And so then I can take my cell phone and I can put it down on the table, even upside down. And what that does is it tells the speaker who's trying to talk to me that they're only as important as the next ding on my phone.
Right, because we're always communicating. You cannot not communicate. And there's something else, the priority. You're communicating where somebody is on that priority list. Nope, you're not very high. Anybody who texts me is higher up than you are.
Yep.
And you mentioned the term. I just want to, my job is to, and I'll practice some poor skills here.
Go for it.
But interrupting you every once in a while, just as a viewer, you said active listening. Now I know what that means, but I want to ground everything down. Can you give me an example of active listening and describe it?
Gotcha. So the real core of active listening, of just the high level basics, is you've gotten rid of distractions. You're, as you said, Paul, at the beginning, you're leaning in appropriately. It depends on, the situation. I know, exactly. You've got that eye contact, that
Uh-huh.
appropriate eye contact, which, you could spend a whole day talking about that. Because Paul, if I stared at you the way I do my husband, that might creep you out, but be totally fine with my husband. And then your nonverbals, your body language is open. If you have a drink, you've got that as much away from between you two. I know. Yep. You're not leaning out. Your arms are crossed. You're all that. And then as they're talking, you let them finish a thought. And that's a crazy thing, is we just want to interrupt and talk and, oh, but what I have to say is important, or I'm going to forget what I want to say. So I have to blurt it out so I don't forget, let them finish a thought. And letting the other person finish a thought, automatically you have to be thinking about what they're saying, because how else do you know when they're done with their thought, right? Then when they're done with their thought, rather than going into what your response is, instead clarify or rephrase, right? So some of those typical, so what I hear you saying is this, or so what I heard was that, or can you clarify this point for me? If you're doing all of that, all of a sudden what happens is it's not so much that the other person feels heard, as much as the other person is subconsciously thinking, oh, they're listening. They might actually remember. They're invested. So now I'm more willing to share what's really important and what's really on my
Mm.
mind. I'm more willing to share what's hard to say, the really important, hard stuff. I'm more willing to say that now because I can tell you're listening. And
Wow.
that's where the magic comes in. Because
All
if you,
right. So
yeah,
one of the things that I want to do is make sure we get chunks in there, just little chunks. So
I
I want to
know.
feedback what I would love to hear the two different ways. Listening, you were saying it's like listening just to wait till they stop talking or interrupt them, or listening and feeding it back. I'm trying to think of if you had a snappy way of saying those. How are you listening? So I actually have a guide in my head. Am I
Oh,
listening to understand, or am I listening to for silence?
oh man, I don't have a snappy way. The only thing I've
We'll
said,
have to come up
look,
with
we got to
that.
come up, or folks listening have one. Yeah, the only one I've really said is just let the speaker finish a thought. So that's as fancy as I've gotten so far.
And I think what's critical in that is that, especially between the masculine and the feminine can tend to talk this much and the masculine can tend to listen this much. So it's important to chunk down thoughts so
Yeah.
that it's like, oh, can I hear the whole thought? Because if it goes too long, I start losing it. And
That's a good, you know what? That's actually a good point. And that's actually a whole nother piece of what if somebody does just kind of bleed through a whole huge long thought there. And in that case, what would you say, Paul? Because that's actually not my relationship expert area. It's more just the listening skills piece. Would you say then a gentle interruption that clarifies or says, okay, hold on a moment, I want to make sure I understand what you've said so far?
yeah, it chunks. And Marshall Rosenberg used to say, like, as emotions go up, intelligence goes down, and do 40 words max. If it's a really important thing, you might go a sentence at a time and check in. And if
Yeah.
someone's talking longer than I have the capacity to hear, I'll say, wait, I want to make sure I'm following you. So I
Hmm.
will interrupt, but not interrupt. Sometimes I interrupt to say what I want to say. I'm guilty as anybody on that. But
Yeah.
a lot of times I'll interrupt to go, wait. So Lynn, let me see if I got it right. What you were saying is this. Did I get it? So I can, it's like
Yeah.
a chunk at a time so I don't get overwhelmed. And I want to ask people, what's the impact in your relationships of not being heard? Like, how many out there in the listening world, how many of you ever been in a relationship where you haven't felt heard? And I'm like raising my hand. I went through, by the way, Lynn, 1 divorce, 4 broken engagements. I was the crash dummy for relationships. So I've learned it. And
yeah. Well, and when you're not heard, it's lonely. And when you think about this last year, especially, and people being isolated, so much of what's going on is they just want to be heard. They want to be seen. And that just makes the hugest difference. Because a lot of times, as you know, a lot of times we can solve our own issues.
yes,
or we can get very far along the way, but we need to know somebody is there that cares. And a lot of times that comes in the form of listening. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see if I can. This is going to be high drama. Are you ready for this?
Oh, okay.
Me spelling in public.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
So here are 3 things, and Lynn and I haven't talked specifically about this, but I can tell we're on the same page. People want, when they're speaking, they want 3 things. They want to be heard, understood, and when you're heard and understood, you can feel valued.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you let people know that they're heard? I almost want to do, like, is there a role play we can do that you can show them some of the listening skills that you do to?
Well, there's one that doesn't encompass all of it, but there's one that's really, when I talk to folks, really powerful. That seems to be the one that sticks with people. So I'd love to share about that. Yeah. And
Totally.
So this is the concept of you're talking to someone or listening to somebody. They may not be the best at sharing as much detail as you would like, or you think there's more detail there. And so one of the tricks is to help them feel more comfortable to speak, or to give them a place or a space to speak, is after you've got all those other, eye contact, leaning in, open body language, all of that. Then if they share something, repeat the last word or 2 of the last sentence they said when they pause, with a question inflection. And so much of the time, they will then continue. So, like, the classic example, since I have teenagers, is the teenager comes home from school. How was your day at school? Fine. Oh, fine? Yeah, well, math was kind of dumb. Dumb? Yeah, well, the teacher gave this really hard assignment, and so-and-so cheated on it, and they got in trouble. Trouble? Yeah, well, they get in trouble all the time, blah, blah, blah. So you can kind of see, that was a really lighthearted, easy example.
Right.
But it's amazing how powerful that is, to just do that last word with the inflection, question inflection. And then the hardest part is the awkward silence and pause and showing them. Yeah. And then people just share so much. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. And it is, there's definitely a difference in the sexes between the way the masculine communicates and the way the feminine communicates. So I'd like to hear from both sides, because a lot of men want less details.
And a lot of women want more details.
I know. And so we've stereotyped it. And the reason that there's certain stereotypes is because there's certain, if we look at it, hunters, the game is moving. They don't want to, but gatherers, they need all of the specific details. So it's like survival for thousands of years has depended upon us having these specialities.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do when you're wanting to listen and they're speaking more than you enjoy? How do you deal with that?
It's interesting you say that, because my husband and we actually are the opposite of the stereotypes in that way. So I feel like in my own little life, I can learn about that or speak to it just a tiny bit. But I would say if you've got somebody who is, I'd like to say they're probably a verbal processor, right? So these are the
Hmm.
people who narrate their whole life. Everywhere you go, they're like a bird, a cow, and you're sitting there thinking, I can see that bird, I can see that cow, and it's and, and so I think as far as a conversation, sometimes if I'm feeling flooded by too much coming at me, just,
Hmm.
after a while, it starts sounding like, wah, 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 that's all I can hear, is sometimes I will lovingly just say, okay, time out, honey, time out. Give me just a minute to process everything you said. And sometimes I've gone as far as saying, I need a few moments of silence so I can think about what you said,
Hmm.
because I can't hear and process at the same time. And it just depends on what do you think, Paul? That works for us. What do you think for other people that you've worked with? Is that even in
Well,
the ballpark, or are we just weirdos?
no, it's in the ballpark, and there's different masculine. See, I have strong feminine traits and masculine traits, and
Uh-huh.
and the brain tends to be, from what I've studied the neuroscience, wired different though for feminine than masculine. And for the feminine, at least from what I've studied, there seems to be more neural pathways between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. So women can feel and talk at the same
Mhm.
time. Men, there's this little trail between the two. And so we can either have a feeling or talk about the feeling. And a lot of
Mhm.
times men are, accused of not having feelings. No, it's we can't talk about them while we're having them. We have them deeply and profoundly. And it
Interesting.
and speaking in chunks, what that causes people to do is get clear. What is it you actually want me to understand? So
Mm.
I might say
Mhm.
you've been talking about this for a while, and I still am no closer to understanding you. So what am I missing? Here's what I think I got,
Mhm.
and can you tell me what I'm missing? Because you're still talking, so there's something you want to say,
Yep. Yep.
So can you tell me? And it's like taking it on. I think part of the reason I wanted to even have you on here is people need to understand that you learn how to talk, but you rarely learn how to communicate. It's a refinement. It's an advanced skill. It's like you
Yeah.
taking courses with Lyn or somebody and practicing learning to listen.
Mhm.
It's here we go. This is the book I wrote
Yeah.
is Argue Less, Love More,
Love
became a
more.
bestseller. And it's
Mhm.
all about avoiding tripping their trigger and have the listening switch go off. Now, the listening switch, I think, is a term I came up with, but is an obvious one. You may have heard it or maybe not.
I haven't heard listening switch, but I would say in our house we call it going monkey brain. And
Uh
so
huh.
if you get into that fight, flight, freeze or fawn, you're going monkey
Right.
brain. You just can't think anymore. And so yeah, that's what we use sometimes. It's like, hang on, honey, I'm going a little monkey brain here. And they're like, okay, I know what that means.
Right. My reptile brain is kicked in. And I actually
Yep.
have something that is really important, because we speak from and people can get this on one of the other talks that I've done on the Courageous Love Show, but the
Yeah.
head, the heart, or the hurt. And when we're in our hurt, we're in the reptile brain. And all we can do is enemy or ally, safe
Hmm.
or dangerous. And to pull
Hmm.
somebody out of that, the worst thing you can do is try to explain to them why they shouldn't feel the way they feel.
Yep. Yep. And just invalidate what they're going through. Tell them they're crazy. It's not their reality isn't true.
Yeah. And the best thing you can do is just lean in and go, honey, what do you need to feel safe right now? Magic words. What do you need to feel safe?
Yeah.
So, Lyn, how do you take somebody who's habitually a poor listener and turn them into someone who is actually looks forward to listening?
So what I do is I can't claim to make people experts at listening, but as far as looking forward to listening, helping individuals understand how powerful listening is, and even with, business and business negotiations, the more you listen and the more you can really understand about the individuals that you're working with, it just gives you just an amazing ability to meet them where they need to be met to be able to have that negotiation work through. And I've got 20 years of corporate consulting in my belt. I call myself a corporate survivor. And I've had multi-million dollar deals signed under the caveat that my name would be in the contract of who would be managing it. They're like, I'll sign this because I trust her. And seriously, the only thing I've done is listen. So they know that I get them, which sounds so really simple. But it's so when folks understand that it's really an amazing, powerful way to connect with people. And if you're feeling, lonely, if you're feeling unheard, it could also be, it depends, right? High conflict situations could be different, but just in general, it could maybe be that you're not listening. And so by learning just those very basic, somebody said here, the ABCs, Elizabeth said, the ABCs of listening here, learning those, just being boom, boom, boom. They're tactical. They're easy. You can learn them. You can do them. And here's the crazy thing. Nobody wants to be the jerk who's not the listener. As soon as you talk about listening skills, and everybody wants to say, oh, I'm a good listener. And then it's amazing how fast some of those skills come back to them. And then they start in that moment. They might forget it 10 minutes later, but in that moment, they're listening. So, just kind of spreading the joy about it.
So why don't we value listeners more? I mean, you just said that a second ago, $1 million contracts as long as you're there. And what you did was like, listen,
Well,
how come everybody wants to be, and I'm guilty of this. How come people want to be the idea person rather than the listening person?
It goes hand in hand. And I would say that probably to say, for me, listening wasn't the only thing that got that contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
But listening is the piece that I would say gelled it and melded it, made it happen. And so I think it's really, as with communication, there's the part of being able to speak in a way that you can be heard and understood. But then there's also it's the other half of that cog of being able to listen in a way so you have both of those working together. And so I just focus on the listening piece with listening skills, because by golly, we're pretty good at talking,
By golly.
By golly.
We can talk up a storm.
I mean, look at us. We're talking about listening. So,
Yeah. We're talking about time. Well, I'm just going to show a quick slide of like when it goes wrong, and I'll ask you to dive in someplace in there, but
sure.
It's like, I'm going to show that when it goes wrong, we don't feel heard, understood, and valued. And one of the ones I focus on there that causes people the most problems is the understood part, because people are afraid if I understand you, that you're going to think I agree with you.
Oh, you know what? That's actually, I'm really glad you brought that point up, because there is that fear of, if I understand you, am I implying that I agree with you? And I think that's a thing that we need to work through that and realize that understanding does not mean agreeing. And part of my story of where that came from was back in 2019, before we had any idea what 2020 would be. I made a New Year's resolution, because I'm one of those weirdos. I love New Year's resolutions. And I know it's not for everybody. It's even a pet peeve for some, but I love them. I made a resolution that I was going to spend a significant amount of time in the year 2020 doing what I call listening to the other. And so I went, And when I found somebody that I thought was crazy or wackadoodle, I mean, we can all think of like, oh my gosh, they're so crazy. I would go in. If they had a website, I would read it. If they had a YouTube channel or a podcast, I would listen to hours of it. If they had an email list, I would sign up for it. So my email, oh my gosh, I had to tell my husband, I'm like, hang on, honey, if you ever get into my email, I got crazy stuff going on in there. I learned, well, at first I could do it for a couple of days and then I'd have to take a break because I would just darn near have a panic attack. It was just so, so hard. Then after a while, something magical kind of happened. And I began to realize that, yes, we have issues in the country. Yes, there are problems to be solved. But for the vast majority of all of us, we are way more aligned than we ever could imagine. Way more aligned. And that comes from listening to the other too. So
that's it. Yeah. Lynn, that's a beautiful thought. And it's created several of the projects. I just did a project, about 4 months ago. I started something called Across the Aisle with a friend of mine. It's that exact thing, is listening to the other side. And it was every Wednesday. I think they still have it going months later, where the Democrats, the Republicans, Black Lives Matter, police, whatever, it didn't matter. You could be heard and understood and valued. And before the next person could talk, they had to feed back what they just heard. And we wanted to get the total diversity in there.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
and how was that experience? Yeah.
Oh, it was, well, it came from something really embarrassing, which is me being on Facebook and having friends that have very different political views, and me like getting caught up in the snappy comments, like basically writing what an ass you are. Now this is not exactly the words I use, but it's sort of the implication. How stupid are you to have that thought? Which is like, I am a relationship and intimacy coach and would never teach anybody to do that. And here I was behaving that way. And I said, wow, there's really something for me to learn here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I did that. And the other project I did was this was a while ago, but for 8.5 years, I went into prison and taught minimum to maximum security inmates nonviolent communication and
Very cool.
the stuff I learned from Tony Robbins to enter their world, because people are doing the best they can with the tools they have. And that's why I think part of one of the most powerful communication tools we can develop is the art of listening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So absolutely.
So I'd like to ask the viewers to participate just a tiny second. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, when you're communicating, what do you think that you feel as an average? Does your partner listen at a 10, a 7, a 5, a 3, never? You can send the numbers in private, or, you can put them right there on the thing. No one's going to know except for us little inner circle what those numbers even mean. But how heard do you feel? And it's like when I've worked with clients, sometimes bring them to tears because they've never been heard like that before.
Yeah.
And it's the feeding back, like you said, sometimes the last word, sometimes it's the sentence, it's the thought, it's the feeling. Yeah. So how did you learn active listening, and how? Well, actually, wait a second. I started showing something here, and
yes, you're right.
I'm going to go back.
Great.
So we don't feel heard, understood, or valued, and then what happens is people get desperate, and the harder they try, because a lot of times we hear this thing, we just don't communicate enough. And I say, no, sometimes we communicate way too much. If we're communicating the wrong thing. So the harder we try, the worse it gets. We trip each other's triggers, and that causes a feeling of constant conflict, eroding trust, eroding intimacy. We wonder where our love life went, and it takes days or weeks to recover. Now, I learned a lot from my dad, and part of what I learned are some communication habits that it's taking me years to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Like
And
not
he,
good ones, you're
like,
saying.
very not good ones.
Very not good ones.
And he would say the best defense is a strong offense. And I could hold a grudge and withhold love and affection and attention and all of these things, and still have some shame around my lack of skills growing up in the world of communication.
Interesting. Fascinating.
So how did this even become a career for you? Like, how do you go from just, oh, I'm listening to people, to go, oh, I want to make this something special?
Gotcha. Okay, so this is actually I call it a side gig because it's really, the listening has been a piece my whole life. Education and training is my background. Like I said, I have 20 years in corporate at 500 companies. And then I did my 2019 resolution to listen to the other. And then the actual listeningskills.shop website, where that came from, was actually my high school son had a summer work study to do. And he came to me and he's like, Mom, you're a podcaster. Podcasting is cool. Can you teach me how to podcast? And I thought, oh, thanks. Yeah, that's the website there. And so we decided to, sure, I'll teach you how to podcast. And he got all excited and he learned how to put it on, Apple and Spotify and all that. And then when it came down for him to actually record, he just shut down. And he's like, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. I mean, like good teenager, right? Perfect. Why are you making me do this anyway? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And I already paid my $200 for him to do this so he could get this credit. So I listened to him and asked him, because he said, this is stupid. I'm like, stupid? Tell me more. What's going on? And when we hashed it out, we realized what was going on is he liked the whole technology of it all, but he has chosen, and I have so much respect for him for this, he has chosen to keep his digital footprint really small. And he's high school. And he said, I'm not ready to go out in public yet. And so I don't want to record. So he's like, Mom, can you come up with a podcast topic, record some episodes, and then I'll do the rest of the project. And that was where it came from. So I was like, oh my gosh, okay, we'll do listening skills. We'll do the basics. And so when you go there, the website is simple. Like he did it all, but each lesson is like 3 minutes long. It's super simple. You can get through the whole thing in 40 minutes. And he did the graphics, the editing. He's so proud of the music he chose. You'll have to let me know what you think of it. It's actually kind of cool. And then we made it so it's agnostic of everything. So we don't touch politics. We don't touch religion. We don't touch anything. There is one joke in there that I can't tell you about. You have to just, go and see. Otherwise, it's just there, designed open for everybody. And so this really is the product of a high school young man and working together with me. And so it's a side gig. Yeah. So I made, go ahead.
And Lyn, at some point, I'm going to sign up for your course when you go how to talk about politics, religion, sex, immigration, abortion with the people you love and maintain the relationship. See, when you
that's the holy grail. And when we first did this, I thought, oh my gosh, we'll have advanced level ones, and I realized these basic skills are so powerful. The feedback I've been getting is it changes their lives, and it's so simple, so little. So we're letting it ride right there for now. And of course, as you know, Paul, the devil's in the detail and it gets more complicated, but it's just the simplicity of it has been really refreshing for people.
Well, the simplicity is genius.
Hmm.
And you said simple, and simple doesn't make it easy
Mm-hmm.
because we
Mm-hmm.
get so triggered in our emotions and get taken out of our logic. So remember, I said the head, the heart, the hurt. When we're
Yeah.
speaking in our reptile brain, we don't have access to like all of these amazing tools and skills. We become like 5-year-olds. So we need tools that a 5-year-old or 10-year-old can apply. So that's why
Yeah.
something like your course is an awesome thing. It's sort of like if you think about simplifying, if you want to get in shape, it's really simple. Eat less, eat better, exercise more.
Sorry. Sorry.
It's it's simple. And I look down, I go, how come I'm gaining weight? Well, because that eating less thing isn't working for me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's way more than there's way more going on. Absolutely. Yeah. And part of it is it's the lifestyle, and how do you build it so it's just part of your automatic life. And that actually is one of the things I did is I used my, education background and came up with the listening skills guide that's
Mm-hmm.
there. And essentially it gives a few more tools on how to practice each skill taught. And then it has individuals go out into the real world and start observing conversations. At course, COVID, I don't know if everything's
Mm-hmm.
closed down. It is California, yes, but observe and be like, okay, now let's look at this one skill: getting rid of distractions, taking that cell phone, put it away. Now go out into the world and start observing conversations. How would they be different if those people talking observed that one skill? Would it, yeah. And then you go, I know. Yeah. So you do this, by the time you get through them, observing conversations is ruined for the rest of your life. So just fair warning, because you can see how this easy to know, but hard to do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
somebody just wrote that in. Angela said, easy
Oh,
yet difficult to do just a
yep.
second ago. So,
Perfect.
and
Yeah.
as listeners, as you're getting insights, anything, let us know. I will respond. We can see a lot of your feedback here, but sometimes I don't get it until I check, because this goes out to a bunch of different places. So,
Mm.
um, take me through a conversation. Let's do a before and after
Hmm.
conversation where we do the interrupting. So let's just have an ordinary conversation, and you be you before listening skills and you be you after listening skills. So people have some contrast. And if you can't do that, I definitely can.
I'll do my best.
I can.
I'll go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, so
So
so you're talking first?
I'm talking for
You're talking
be
and I'm listening.
well, you could be pseudo listening and not listening at all, or
Yes.
doing
You're
all
talking.
of the traits. And
Okay, but hang on just a second though. Hang on. Sorry, I'm sorry. I gotta do how's
so yeah, you're doing good, Lynn.
I just
So
you're like,
let me
wait, it's already
start by
wrecked. It's wrecked before we get going.
this is really important to me. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to share from my heart. And, I want to tell you about like when my dog died, and I felt lost. And so
Uh-huh. And you're okay. I'm sorry,
are you,
your dog died. Okay. Yeah, I'm listening. Go ahead. You can't even do it.
oh my God. I almost was politically incorrect. I looked at you like, you suck at listening. This is no
You
fun at all.
almost went monkey brain on me.
I felt like, it's like you can look
You're
at
like,
it for people, you're in monkey brain when you're going, is it enemy or ally? And ooh, it's
you're like,
still like,
we haven't even started. She's so rude.
and I am trained, and it was like so almost instant
And the only
that,
thing I did was look away and pick up my phone. That's it. That was the only change I made. I know. I'm still smiling. I was still acting like I was trying to listen. I mean, I didn't even pull up my glass and put it between us, So yeah.
I'm sure there's a ton of other things you could have done. And I just watched. It is a lot of actually, the least part of the communication is the actual words.
Mm-hmm.
It's our physiology, it's our tonality, and then the last thing is the words. And the physiology, totally, I'm like, where'd
she go?
I know I had her attention a minute ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's amazing how much that impacts any conversation. And even doing this listening skills project with my son, it was actually really awesome because then he got these skills and became a better listener. And he was actually already a pretty good listener. And then it became dinner table talk around our family because the skills are so simple. I know. Yeah, the skills are just so simple. So we had a sense of humor about it and things. And we were, I mean, I would say we were an above average family because we don't have cell phones at our table. At dinner table when we do that together. But it's still, even with us, it's still a practice. It's still just compassionately reminding each other. But it's been so good for me to just not take my child for advantage or granted. Thank you for granted. That was the word. I was like, something's not right. And when he speaks to me, to like, he'll come up to me and I'll be on my phone. He comes up to me, starts, talking, just immediately phone down, looking at him. It's amazing. And okay, here's another one for folks who are
wait.
Oh, okay. I got more. No, go.
I know. But Lynn, I want it like to settle in each one. That was I just heard something that conversations around the dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the terms I use is setting people up to succeed. So either set them up to fail or set them up to succeed. And to have that conversation, not having devices at the dinner table is a great way to set it up for the possibility of a conversation. So I wanted to just go slow through that and acknowledge your wisdom there. And was there resistance around that, or was it easy?
I think they get it. And part of it is we put our own phones away. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we saw resistance. I think we also would give them an end point sometimes of, dinner. So when you're done eating in 20 minutes, if you want to get up and do dishes, that's great. You're not stuck here forever. Something like that seems to work.
If you want to get up and do dishes.
Yeah, that's the deal, man. If you get up first, you do dishes. And
my ass is sitting right here. No, actually, see, I'm the official dish doer. When I'm with my beloved, I am the master of the dish.
Awesome. So. Awesome. Yeah. So that seems to work pretty well. And then I think we're also fortunate. We have a nice dynamic. We're a second marriage. So we each have a child. There's 4 of us and our teens are older. And so we have a nice, we've cultivated a nice dynamic that's really been around focusing on loving each other first and knowing that sometimes teenagers are really unlovable or seem to be. And I remember we have about a year ago, we took the boys camping and we went for a walk, and we were frustrated at both boys for different things. And I was like, you know what? We just need to go back and love on the boys. And so we were kind of silly. We're a funny family. So we went back to the tent. The boys were hanging out and we're like, oh, we love you boys, and give big hugs and hug. And it was, they knew we were half joking, but totally serious. They also knew they were in trouble, but knew we were making an effort. And it just melted things. And yeah, just loving on them, even when they're kind of unlovable, has been really, really powerful for the four of us.
Yeah, it's either hugs or dishes.
Yes.
Let's. I want to bring up something from one of the people. It says, my partner will tell me if you had said this, I then realized it's exactly how I felt, but didn't have the right words or phrase to know how I felt. Basically, a lot of times I'll do that with someone when they're expressing their pain, and I'll try to feed it back, because Marshall Rosenberg talked about it in nonviolent communication. It's like what we're doing, we're always, all communications trying to get a precious need met.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to make a request, or we're trying to express our feelings and needs. So sometimes if I can feed it back and they go, you're such an ass. And I was like, I'm going to translate that.
Yeah.
So are you feeling frustrated because you've got to go to bed now and you were hoping you could stay up later, or whatever it
Yep.
is? Like, so translate it into something that's digestible for both parties. And a lot of times people go, wow, yeah, that is what I feel. And I didn't have the words for it.
Yep. And sometimes, would you say sometimes that's perfect and awesome, and other times maybe they're not quite ready to hear where they're really at too? What do you think about that? It just depends, huh?
It depends.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're being such a jerk because deep down inside you're a wounded child and you're but
So
yes. Mm-hmm.
any tips? Like there've been a lot here. So there's the body language, the eye contact, putting down the phone, making them a priority, not only putting down the phone, but turning off the phone, and it can be it could be at the dining room table. It can also be in the bedroom. Do you,
Mm-hmm.
And do you turn your phone off at night or on airplane mode, or do you even allow it in the bedroom?
For us, you know what? We go back and forth. We go back and forth on it. But as far as like tips for listening and making connections in
Mm-hmm.
general, one of them that I have in the listening skills.shop that has really isn't necessarily related to listening, but it's so incredibly powerful, is remembering names of people. And this is, of course, goes outside of your family, where of course your best friends' names and your kids' names, right? But listening to people's names and knowing their names is so incredibly powerful, because that is who they are. That's who they see themselves as, their name and who they are. And when I did the again, my 20 years of corporate consulting, one of the things that I did was they called it the new business engagement manager. So when we would get business with a brand new client, I was the face to the new client. And so when I would fly to the client site, I would literally sit on the airplane and memorize the organization chart. And I would just rehearse. Yes. And I would rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it. And then when I walked in, somebody would say, hi, I'm Michael. And oh, Michael Applewood. Nice to meet you. Is Sue going to be at today's meeting? I know Sue's Michael's boss. All of a sudden, I have no idea who Sue is. I would never recognize her in a lineup of 10,000 people, but he
Mm-hmm.
thinks I've got that connection. And all of a sudden, we've got that connection. So that almost sounds manipulative, but I guess it just goes to show how powerful it is to remember the names of people that you meet in your life.
And I see the thing I think about when you say that manipulation, if you look it up in the dictionary, it's the skillful handling of. And what people typically mean is when you're using something against them rather than for them. It sounds like your skills were to help make people feel more comfortable at home,
Mm-hmm.
create connection, all the rest of it. So it'd be silly to not do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It
And
wasn't to use it against them. It was to create that connection and that bond.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard work to remember people's names, but you just,
Oh, it is.
yeah, just YouTube, how to remember someone's names. There's all kinds of videos. You can just start doing it. You meet a neighbor, grab that name in your head. When you get home, get a piece of paper, write it down, put it there, and then practice, practice. So when you see that neighbor again, you can say hi and know their dog's name. It's so powerful for making connections and just beginning the communications.
I'll give you a total example. That's such a
Okay.
great one. I am currently living in a gated community, and there's a different guard at the gate almost all the time. And I know almost all of their names.
Yeah.
And I wrote them down. It's like I went through, and it was like this. I'm this faceless, nameless person going through, and I got it like. And finally, I said, no. I'm going to know them. I'll know Bree and Russ and Carla and Greg, and and now it's like I get near the gate, and for some of them, it's just beat there. I'm right on through. They know me, and it's a totally different relationship.
Yeah, it really is. It is. It's like, hi, Bree, Russ, Carla, Greg,
See, you had it right there. So yeah.
I didn't even write it down, but yeah, it is. And, I lived in Seattle for years, well, 20 years, and then recently moved to Bainbridge Island, which is a ferry ride west of Seattle. It's kind of like the Staten Island of Seattle. If I'm not the Staten Island, is that right? Yeah. Staten Island, kind of like the Staten Island of, and no, Long Island. There we go. Long Island of Seattle. See, I'm from the West Coast, not the East. How embarrassing. But it's a small town, needless to say. And there, people do get to know each other. And they do say hi at the grocery store because they know they're going to see you again. And at first, it was a little weird. And now, when I go into what we call the city of Seattle, it's really weird to walk by so many nameless faces. I know.
Right.
I get my groceries. I'm going to say hi to the person who's helping me. I don't care if I'll never see you again in my life. Like, you're a human.
Yeah.
So,
So we're wrapping it up. I want to tell people, first thing, people, all you people out there in Facebook land, it would be awesome if you got one tip that you got from Lyn or from me that you're going to go and apply and use. That would be great if you wrote that in. If you want to dive in deeper to Lyn's listening tools, Lyn Lindbergh's listening tools. I mean, there's a lot of alliteration in there.
Yep.
Her little listening shop of never mind. I'm not going to go there. Listening skills.
Go for it. But it is, listeningskills.shop. It's not a .com. It's a .shop. Listeningskills.shop.
All right. That is a way that if you want to find out more about her tools, go there. If you want to find out more about me, and if you're interested in creating a breakthrough in your relationship, I've spent the last 25 years working on it. I will walk you through. If you want to, we'll create a breakthrough for you. And I've spent about, the 25 years developing skills to do this. So if you want a breakthrough, just put breakthrough in the comments below, or message me and we'll set that up. And it's like, give yourself a coach. Go to Lyn, go to me, go to, Tony Robbins, go to somebody, but get a coach. Learn how to listen and communicate and get your needs met. And you'll create a relationship that's remarkable. But don't do it by accident. Don't just think that you're a good listener because you stopped talking.
But that's what they taught us in elementary school.
Listen, pause, phrase what you believe they said. That's the act of listening. Thanks, Dan, for being one of our wonderful participants, and Turquoise and Angela and Elizabeth, who's a friend for a long time. And thank you, Lyn, for your wisdom. if people have somebody that they think will get a lot out of this, you can listen to the recording, to the replay, and just put them in their name in the comments below or forward them this link. And that's it. Have an awesome day. Any closing words, Lyn?
Oh, just thank you, Paul, for having me here. It's been an honor, and it's been fun to get to know a couple of the folks watching today via the chat.
Got it.